So let's jump to our resource pack directory, and we're going to open the 23rd step, front.php, adding routing component. Copy the entire code, and paste it over the code that's currently in the front.php file and save it. Now let's do a quick comparison with our last version of the front.php file. So that's going to be step 19 compared to step 23. And I'm going to drag it over to our file comparison tool. All right, as you can see, there's a lot of changes here. So first of all, since we're going to use the routing component, we add the use keyword in Symfony component routing. Instead of having our map over here, we're instead including our app.php file, and that's going to serve as our route mapper. Now, because we're using the routing component, we also have to use a different way to approach matching the path. Because the path can be complicated, it can include optional parameters, it can include required parameters, it can include multiple parameters. We're going to use a matcher. In order for the matcher to work, we need to provide it two different parameters, the routes and the context. So we got the routes from our app.php file, and notice that what we're doing here is including a file and setting it to a variable. The way we were able to do this, if we jump back to our code and take a look at our app.php file, was by using this return here at the end. Now, even though this variable has the same name as the variable that we're using in our front controller, they're actually two separate things. In this file, we could have called this anything. We could have called it potatoes. And then, in our front controller, we could have said routes equals and then include this. And even though the variable was called potatoes in there, it's actually just returning that value and assigning it to this variable. So now we can use it as routes. This allows you to freely use any variables inside of an include file without worrying about overriding them outside of the file. So that's the routes that we're passing here. And then context, which is an instance of routing request context, is actually just a little wrapper around some of the properties of our request object. So we're basically setting up a few of those properties from the request object here. So these are the two requisites that we need for the matcher, which is an instance of routing matcher URL matcher. We have some examples here of how we can use that, which we'll go over in a moment.